Well, good afternoon, folks, and welcome back to the farm. It's a beautiful day here this afternoon, but it comes at a cost, and that cost, in fact, is minus 23 degrees Celsius out right now. We've been having snow for a couple of days, so maybe eventually we'll be able to use this thing. Actually, since we bought that thing, I don't think it snowed once until here the last couple of days. But it is what it is. I never put out a video for the last couple of days, and there's a reason for that. It's a pretty serious reason. So here's what no one talks about, but everybody should talk about it, is your mental health. And I've talked about this in the kind of periphery of this in a few videos previously, especially about burnout on the homestead and losing your passion. And I touched on the subjects, but I've never really sunk my teeth into it. And I'm probably not going to sink my teeth in it today, but I will say this one thing. And if you've watched this video and you take one point away from it, it should be this one, is that if you do not take the time for your mental wellness, you're going to have to make time for your mental illness on the downstream side of that. And so that's why the last couple of days have been just like, it's December. We're like 7 days away from the shortest day of the year. It's cold. You can't do much. You don't have any daylight. It's always the end of the year, the stress that comes with that, and then just trying to keep the farm running. I've been in kind of a funk and needed a couple of days just to be like, no, you know what? I'm going to focus on stuff around here. I'm going to focus on the family and focus a little bit of have a few cups of tea, right, to help me. And then we'll get back to it. So that's today's lesson. Now, as I said, being minus 20, I got to deal with a hard water issue. So this tap out here, from previous videos, when it gets real cold like this, doesn't like to work because, it freezes, right? Now, usually on a beautiful day like that, the sun beating down this wall, give it a couple hours, this will all melt off and the tap will work again. But there's times when I need water at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I got to get this issue fixed. So I got a can of spray foam. And what I'm actually going to do on the inside, around where the insulation, the fiberglass insulation is a little bit loose, is I'm going to stuff sheep's wool, yes, sheep's wool, all the way around it. And then right up against the tin here, I'm actually going to put some spray foam insulation in there with like an aerosol spray foam. And then put that tin plate back on and cover it all back up. And fingers crossed, we'll have that problem solved. Now, one of our other viewers, Logan, had asked, well, couldn't I just, use a tap on the inside? Well, actually, right about here on the inside, there is actually a tap that I use. And I theoretically could pop the screen out and run a garden hose out and do this. I don't really like to do that. It's not that I couldn't do it. I just don't. Now, option B is that I run a garden hose from there all the way down the shop, out the front door, and then back around. And that just becomes a lot of hassle for the fact that I actually already put a valve there, and I just want that valve to work. So I'm here now in the back of the shop, and we have like a bathroom with a shower and toilet and everything set up in there. And our pump station, you might recall from a previous video where I have this cut out in the wall here, and that's where the garden hose connection actually goes out and through the wall. And what it had to do was get the old heat gun fired up. But where this come through the wall here, it's cold back in here, right? Because I got kind of a hole in the vapor barrier. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to seal that up. I'm going to jam a bunch of sheep wool in there. I'm going to seal it up with spray foam insulation. And so that'll both insulate and fix that vapor barrier hole issue, and hopefully keep the body of the valve defrosted. Okay, so I backfilled in behind here with a bunch of sheep's wool all the way around, and then I filled in with a spray foam insulation inside the core, put that plate back on the wall, and give it a little taste with the heat gun. And hey, we got water going. Let's just hope we can keep water going now. So usually this is something I don't have to worry about, filling this trough up, because as enough comes off the roof of the shop as the sun comes out and melts everything. But because we had a drought, and then now very little in the way of winter precipitation, it's not keeping this thing full. So every 3-4 days I'm having to fill up this trough now with the hose. And that's why it's so important that valve back there does what it needs to do. And previously, like I said, it's never been an issue. Never had to worry about it because I always had enough coming off the roof. But I guess climate change is getting me. So the other thing with this water, My buddy Mike from Edson was asking me about this. How do we keep this defrosted all winter long, even when it's 40 or 50 below? So we just have a floating style water that plugs into the electrical outlet back there. And that's all it is. It's got a little styrofoam thing in the lid. Now, that's a 3-in-1, so you got a couple of different options there. You can either have it float like we do here. You can take the float off and just have it sit in the bottom. And the third option is actually some of them that have a bung down here. You can actually run the cord through the bung and have it sit however you want. For us, it works really well to sit there as a float. And we had another one actually last year that was just the heating element on a float. And it would literally boil the water in the trough at 40 below. And then inevitably boiled it off and then burnt a hole in the bottom of the rubber trough. So we're like, ixnay on that. We said it was supposed to be for a 300-gallon water trough. Well, I'm sorry, even 300 gallons, you'll still eventually heat that water enough that it's going to cause you some grief. So we went to these ones. They're a 1500 watt heater, and I think they were about 50 bucks, something like that, 49 bucks or something like that from PV Mart is where we got those ones. Now, good luck finding that stuff now. Most of the shelves in our feed stores are pretty much empty. For the important stuff, they are anyway. So I find typically sheep don't drink a whole pile, but definitely when you're feeding them hay like that, you know, it's not uncommon for them to drink a lot more. Usually when they're out on pasture and they're getting, you know, good lush rich grass, maybe their water demand is a little bit less. But anytime like right now when they're in confinement in the pens back here, through into the spring when they're lactating, they're going to need a lot more water than they would in, say, you know, June, July, and August. Surprisingly, even the hotter months, they have a lower water demand because they're getting a lot of moisture off the grass, the dew in the morning, things like that. Whereas here they're getting dry grain, dry hay, and through at the end of the winter when they're obviously lactating, there's a massive volume of water that's leaving their body that they need to replace. Now, can they eat snow? Sure they can eat snow in a pinch, but that's not a solution. That's, you know what, if that thing gets a little bit low and they have to eat snow for a half an hour for maybe 1 or 2 drinks, that's not the end of the world. But can they eat snow all winter? That shouldn't be your solution. Now, of course, that's not just an animal welfare thing. That's a feed conservation thing. You know, how many times have you talked about appetite? Well, if I'm hungry, just have a drink of water. But it's the same for the animals, right? If they're thirsty or they're dehydrated, they're going to eat a heck of a lot more. It's just a natural function of the body. So it just makes sense to make sure they're not thirsty. Anyways, it's far too cold to spend too much time out here today. So I'm going to go inside and fix up a cup of tea. So I'll let you go for now. I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.